Quick break before we get started. This video is sponsored by Manta Sleep. And folks, I wouldn't be back with Manta if I didn't genuinely think that their products were excellent. I've never been someone who uses a sleep mask until I got this one from Manta. Sleep masks have always been uncomfortable to me or just unnecessary. They didn't actually keep out light, it was just not for me. But then I got this one, and it was everything I didn't know that I needed. So if you want anything from Manta Sleep, now is the time. From November 19th through the 27th, they're doing the early Black Friday and Christmas sale, 15% off site-wide, and you get a free holiday recharge kit. So go check that out. But let me show you why I love this mask. First off, the adjustability fits any head or any comfortability that you want. Everything velcros nicely together, so you can literally shape it to your exact face. And I'm someone who spends way too many hours staring at screens. Probably, like many of you, and my eyes get pretty cooked. I need to take more breaks, get better rest, and the pro nap movement is something I've finally begun to buy into much more. Take more breaks, and if you want to nap and recharge your brain, their whole design is built around that idea. Real darkness, real comfort, zero pressure on the eyes, whenever you want it, all hours of the day. And if you want to check it out, head over to Manta Sleep, their website, and use my code SWGalaxy for 10% off of your order. And again, the early Black Friday sale is running November 19th to the 27th, 15% off everywhere on the site, plus a free holiday recharge kit. Alright, back to the video. Our story begins in the former Republic Senate chambers, now turned Imperial Senate. Grandmaster Yoda was crawling through the emergency maintenance tunnels of the building after being defeated by Sidious. The last hope of the Jedi against the new Sith Emperor was fleeing because he was not strong enough. Finally, after centuries of complacency, decades of arrogance, and years of blind war, Yoda saw the truth that he, the Avatar of Light, Supreme Master of the Jedi Order, the most powerful foe the dark side has seen, just didn't have it anymore. No, that wasn't right. Yoda realized he never had it. He lost before he ever even started. He lost before he was born. The Sith have grown, changed, and adapted. Over 1,000 years, the Sith dove into intensive study of every single aspect of the Force itself, including the Jedi, all in preparation for this very day. The Sith had remade themselves. They'd become something new, all while the Jedi spent the last millennium trying to refight the last war. Yoda felt hopeless as he crawled through the tunnels. Eventually, he came upon a small window overlooking the city. The window was cracked, and Yoda saw his own broken reflection. And in this moment, Yoda shook his head. What was he doing? What has he become? An entire galaxy needed him to keep fighting, and yet he was choosing to run. Yoda told himself he had no choice. He could not win. But Yoda turned around, and slowly, silently, he opened a hatch that allowed him to see and hear everything going on down in the Senate Rotunda below. And down below, Yoda watched as a Senate pod of Coruscant Guard clones floated over to Emperor Palpatine, and Palpatine ordered them to double their search. But then, Yoda heard something that restored the hope that he'd just lost. Palpatine ordered for his shuttle to be prepared for immediate takeoff. He can sense that Lord Vader is in danger. And Yoda felt the light in the galaxy calling to him again. Even if the galaxy may now be completely blanketed in darkness, even if there is no more sun to rise, there will always be light. And it pushed Yoda in this moment, telling him to finish this. Yoda was suddenly full of determination. If Vader is in danger, then Obi-Wan has done his job. Against the odds, Kenobi has taken down yet another Sith. He's taken down his own Padawan. Yoda knew that failure was not an option, and even if he dies, Kenobi will still be alive to carry the Jedi forward. So, Yoda called Bail and told him that their plan is off. He's going to keep fighting. For the Jedi, for Obi-Wan, for himself. Down in the Senate hangar bay, Emperor Palpatine moved through the doors and headed for his ship, where 4 clone troopers were waiting. Palpatine knew time was of the essence, but as he moved towards the shuttle, he felt something, a tremor in the Force. From the maintenance tunnels above him, an explosion ripped out of the tunnels. Sidious was thrown to the floor. Smoke and fire lit up the room, and Sidious heard the dying screams of the 4 clones. When the smoke finally cleared, Sidious saw Yoda standing alone, lightsaber back in his hand. He recovered it from the Senate floor and used a shortcut through the tunnels to get here just in time. Sidious screamed out at Yoda, asking why he won't just die, and he blasted lightning at the Grand Master. Yoda was ready this time. He leapt into the air, and, astonishingly, he landed on the lightning tendrils, using them to propel forward. The electricity coursed through Yoda, but it didn't slow him down. It only made him stronger this time. He spun through the air, and Sidious realized a millisecond too late that he was doomed. Yoda put everything he had into this final moment, and he spun right through the chest of Sidious, creating a gaping hole as Yoda landed cleanly behind him. Sidious tried to speak. He tried to maintain his essence, but it was too late. The wound was too great. Sidious slowly fell backwards, landing hard on the steel floor in a cold death. Yoda still had bits of electricity sparking around him as he watched Sidious fall. He recalled those final moments as he just let the Force take over. He used Sidious's power against him, just as the Sith did with the Jedi for so long. He embraced the lightning, and now, in front of him, the body of the Sith Emperor lay dead. In the distance, Yoda could hear footsteps of clones yelling that they just heard commotion in the hangar bay. So, Yoda quickly used the Force to lift Sidious's body up into the shuttle, along with the bodies of the 4 clones, and Yoda himself climbed into the Emperor's shuttle, taking off just before more clones could arrive. When they did arrive, led by Commander Fox, they just found an empty hangar bay, filled with some lingering smoke from the maintenance tunnel explosion, but otherwise, everything seemed normal. Palpatine and the clones were gone, and Fox knew better than to contact the Emperor unless it was an emergency. He trusted the Emperor to know what he was doing, so he just assumed he was flying away in the shuttle with the clones, and Fox ordered the others to continue searching for Yoda. Meanwhile, Yoda jumped to hyperspace in the Emperor's shuttle, taking off to Mustafar. He wasn't sure why, but he just remembered Palpatine saying that Lord Vader was in danger, and despite everything, something deep in Yoda's mind was telling him that Anakin may still be the key to putting everything right in the galaxy. Upon boarding the shuttle, Yoda found a medical capsule already in here. If Anakin is alive, he can be carried in it. And as Yoda flew through hyperspace, something stirred around him in the Force. Darth Sidious spoke to him, laughing as he told Yoda that he is a Grand Master without a Jedi Order. He is a failure. Yoda shook his head, telling this echo of Sidious that he is dead. He has lost. The Sith will never win. The laughter of Sidious echoed away, and Yoda was left to wonder if it was all in his head, or if Sidious's memory lived on in the Force. Either way, he was dead. And on Mustafar, Obi-Wan Kenobi finally took off in Padme's royal starship. Padme and the 2 droids were on board, and neither of the droids spoke as Kenobi rose up out of the lava planet. Padme was unconscious in the back. She was on the verge of giving birth. Kenobi contacted Bail Organa and took off for Polis Massa. Moments later, Yoda would land on Mustafar, and he sensed something here clinging to life. This thing was barely human. It was Anakin, but not really. He had dove so far into the dark side, into his anger, hatred, and pain, into his suffering, just to keep himself alive. No one else in the entire galaxy would be able to survive the wounds and the burns that Anakin has suffered. And yet, because of his sheer power in the Force, Anakin clung to life. Yoda brought the medical capsule down to Anakin and was going in and out of consciousness as Anakin saw Sidious was not here to save him. He saw it was Yoda. This fact alone almost killed Anakin, as he realized this meant Sidious was likely dead, and without Sidious, Padme would also die. Anakin tried to lash out, but he could barely even think. Yoda lifted him into the pod, touching Anakin's forehead with his palm, giving him just a bit of Force energy to keep him alive. Yoda brought the capsule back up to the ship, and before leaving, Yoda slowly lifted the bodies of Palpatine and the 4 clones down into the lava. They all burned away, marking the final end of the Emperor just hours after his proclamation. On Polis Massa, Padme Amidala was slowly waking up and going into labor with her children. Obi-Wan Kenobi was here with Bail Organa. The medical droids were getting to work, and Padme went under the process. And as Obi-Wan was watching, knowing he just cut down the father of these children, it brought him a deep sadness he didn't think he would ever get over. But seconds later, Obi-Wan felt someone arriving in the Force. Yoda, perhaps, but there was more. Yoda was not alone. Obi-Wan felt a familiar presence, and a deep fear began rising up in him as he ran out of the medical room. Bail watched him go with confusion, but he just turned back to Padme for now. And outside of the room, Obi-Wan saw Yoda ushering a medical capsule into another surgery room, as dozens of doctors were sprinting in and out with all sorts of different tools. Obi-Wan felt the world around him go silent as his feet took him towards the capsule. He felt like he was going to throw up as he reached in and looked inside. The charred body of Anakin Skywalker lay inside with a breathing mask connected to his face. And as Obi-Wan looked inside, the dark yellow eyes opened, burning a look of hatred right into Kenobi. Obi-Wan stumbled backwards, hitting the wall behind him as the many doctors began ushering the capsule inside. Obi-Wan didn't understand, but he began to snap out of it as he heard Yoda trying to call his name. Obi-Wan closed his eyes, trying to gather himself, and he asked Yoda what he has done. Yoda admitted he wasn't sure, but he has killed the Emperor, and something in the Force was telling him that Anakin's destiny was not yet complete. Obi-Wan didn't know what to say. He told Yoda that Anakin is a danger to everyone here, especially Padme and the children. But Yoda tilted his head, asking Obi-Wan why he didn't just finish it on Mustafar then. Surely he knew Anakin was still alive, in pain and agony. Obi-Wan looked Yoda in the eyes, saying he didn't finish it because he didn't believe Anakin deserved the mercy of being killed. Yoda shook his head, telling Obi-Wan he doesn't believe him. He believes Obi-Wan left him alive because Obi-Wan is the best of the Jedi. He saw a helpless man lying on the burning lava coals, and he decided not to murder this helpless man. He decided to leave it up to the Force, and the Force has brought him here. Obi-Wan allowed his mind to calm down a bit, as he knew that Yoda was right. The only reason he cut down Anakin when Anakin made the jump was because he had no choice. It was kill or be killed. But when Anakin was still alive on the lava bank, Obi-Wan couldn't finish it. He did, indeed, leave it up to the Force. Obi-Wan just told Yoda he hopes he knows what he is doing, and Kenobi walked back to where Padme was giving birth. Yoda glanced inside of the medical room and saw the many different doctors and droids frantically working to keep Anakin alive. Inside of the sterile medical room of white light, Anakin wasn't sure if any of this was real. The pain coursing through him was still unbearable, and Anakin wondered if he was already dead. But he hit the medical table with his skin charred and cracking. Each breath was a harsh rattle. The med droids were working fast, cutting away charred robes burned to his skin, washing off ash before coating his body in a cooling gel to bring his temperature down. Sedatives kept his heart steady, while the doctors focused on the most urgent of the damage. Yoda stood in the corner, telling himself that saving this young man mattered. Maybe it was proof that the dark side could not win in the end. Yoda wondered who he was doing this for. For Anakin? The Jedi? For himself? Either way, the work continued. Next came the limbs. The team cleaned the wounds inch by inch, scraping away dead tissue until only living, clean flesh remained. Instead of sealing it immediately with a brutal cauterization, like Sidious's facility would have done, they used a soft tissue binder that helped the nerves reconnect naturally to prosthetics. His face took the longest. They had to remove the melted mask of crusted skin, treating the burns with layers of regenerative foam that cooled instantly, and began knitting his features back together as best they could. The damage around his eyes and scalp was severe, but they refused to rush any of it. They kept his head still with a support frame. Med droids laid down healing patches, each one glowing as it activated. It wasn't going to erase the scars, but it could save what was left of Anakin. By the end, he was wrapped in cooling sheets, suspended in a shallow medical pod that kept his body at the exact temperature and pressure needed to heal. Tubes were feeding him oxygen, nutrients, pain relief. It wasn't the rebirth into a weapon that Sidious would have wanted. And finally, Anakin would take a final form, prosthetic limbs covered by gloves and boots, along with a large breathing apparatus flowing from his lungs to his face. He floated in the pod, far from the man that arrived on Mustafar, but he was alive. On the other side of this facility, as Padme gave birth, she asked Obi-Wan where he went, so he told the truth. Anakin is here. Padme couldn't believe it. She feared that Obi-Wan killed him, but hearing that Anakin was not only alive, but that he was here, it gave her the hope she needed. Padme would safely give birth to Luke and Leia, and she would go unconscious from the wounds on Mustafar, but she too was alive. The med droids told Obi-Wan and Bail that she will be alright. She just needs rest. The children were then brought to a different room to be looked after. Obi-Wan looked at Padme, and he wondered how she would react to the truth. But in Padme's mind, something was happening. She was having a dream of some sort, except it was far more than a dream. Padme found herself back on Naboo, in the tall grass next to the grand waterfalls. This was a place she often dreamed of, the place she fell in love with Anakin before the war, but in this dream, she was not alone. Across Polis Massa, as Anakin remained unconscious, he too was dreaming. He was in the same area, Naboo, with the waterfalls and tall grass, the warm wind, the peaceful feeling of it all. But Anakin looked down to his hands and legs, and saw they were not his own. They were all metal, and he saw a reflection of his face in the water, completely changed, scarred, burned, a mask covering the mouth and nose. And from behind him, Anakin heard a voice. It was Padme, calling out in a scared, sad voice. Anakin turned as she walked over to him, saying, "Oh, Anakin, what have you done?" He didn't have an answer. He had started down this path for her, but the further he went into the dark, the more twisted it all became. And now, he was a monster. He tried to apologize, but Padme just sat by him and told Anakin that their lives will never be the same. She can never forgive him for what he has done. They can never truly be together again. Anakin understood, but he just asked her to sit down for a moment, feel the peace and the quiet in these warm winds for one last time. Padme sat, and together, the two of them touched hands as they sat together in this silence. And after a bit, Anakin turned to Padme, but she began to disappear, looking at him with a look that said a million things. Anakin was alone, and he just closed his eyes as tears began to form. Back on Polis Massa, Padme opened her eyes, waking up back in the real world. Wherever she just was, she was thankful for that moment. But now it was back to business. There was an empire to dismantle, and a future to live for with her children. If Anakin were never brought here, Padme wondered if she would have had the will to keep pushing on. Either way, she slowly got up and went to see the twins. And in the other room, Anakin finally would open his eyes as well. They still burned yellow, but it would begin to fade. The dark side had taken everything from him, and without Sidious to guide him or continue pushing him, there was no need to stay in the dark. In fact, the entire premise of joining the dark was to save Padme, only for her to survive without him. It was all one giant lie from the Sith Lord in order to tear down the Jedi Order and bring forth the Sith Empire. And as Anakin began to recover, he would eventually be brought into a room with Yoda, Bail, Obi-Wan, and Padme. All of them could barely look at Anakin, as he was still handcuffed, barely able to move. But Obi-Wan would speak to Anakin and Padme, telling them the plan, giving them their future. Anakin will step in as Emperor of the Galaxy with his wife Padme by his side. He will tell the galaxy that his wounds were sustained at the hand of a Jedi, trying to stop yet another assassination attempt on Emperor Palpatine's life. It will, in fact, be Padme who is pulling the strings of everything, the true ruler, to begin unraveling the strings of this corrupt empire. It may take a year or a decade, but it is their only choice to undo the damage set forth by Palpatine. Obi-Wan told her that Bail will be there to help, Mon Mothma as well, and of course he and Yoda, and Anakin, if he accepts this path. Anakin could only nod. He knew it was the only way forward, and the first steps into this new path were slow and subtle. The galaxy knew Anakin as a hero of the Clone Wars. Palpatine ensured it would be that way, and now it was backfiring. He was made Emperor, and behind him, Padme dismantled the Imperial Council piece by piece, as Anakin had the support of the people. Using audits and extended reassignments, Padme removed the most dangerous loyalists. She redirected military funding away from fleets and into reconstruction, all while framing it as stabilizing the Emperor's new reign. Anakin became the public face of these reforms, stern in meetings, calm in Senate addresses, while Padme drafted true policy with her allies. In time, the Imperial Navy shrunk dramatically. Senatorial committees quietly regained power that had been stripped from them. After a few years, worlds once terrified of the Empire saw stormtroopers delivering food and medicine instead of enforcing crackdowns. Padme played the long game. Together, they created a system that could one day stand on its own, setting the foundation for a new republic to rise without violence or collapse. Step by step, the old empire was shedding its skin. During this time, Padme and Anakin had a working relationship. They spoke often, but the cracks separating them were too large to ever truly overcome. As for Luke and Leia, they were training under a new Jedi Order led by Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, out on Ahch-To, away from politics at least for now. Yoda was in exile, knowing his time as Grandmaster was over, at least for now. But not everyone was blind to the transformation of the Empire. Over time, Admiral Tarkin, Mas Amedda, Director Krennic, and several other surviving members of the Empire noticed that the reforms were too unlike anything Anakin supported. They finally concluded the truth that Padme Amidala, Bail Organa, and others were orchestrating a full dismantling of the Empire from within. Terrified of losing their power and convinced the Skywalkers were the heart of the conspiracy, they began plotting to remove the Skywalker family from the galaxy. And a few days later, Anakin and Padme were working with Obi-Wan and Yoda, returning from his exile, to begin tracking Jedi when they were alerted to a report out of the planet Anaxis. This report came from Imperial spies. It stated that the former war machine General Grievous was spotted on Anaxis, a planet full of dormant Imperial army machines, AT-STs, AT-ATs, TIE fighters. And although this report was likely false, the Jedi knew they had to check it out. If Grievous was alive, they had to be there. So Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda would go with Padme and the twins, now 5 years old, out to Anaxis. The group would take the twins with so that Obi-Wan could continue their training on the way over, having them put on helmets with visors to cover their eyes, and making them use their senses. The twins were already strong for their age, but they were also quite curious. They knew a bit about their family, but not the full truth of why Anakin never trained them. Either way, the group would eventually land on Anaxis and fly deep into the abandoned military base and into the main headquarters building, where Grievous was reportedly spotted. If somehow he were here, these 3 Jedi should easily be able to destroy him. Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda began walking through the old building when suddenly a hologram console sparked to life. The face of Tarkin showed up. He greeted these Jedi, then told them he knew the promise of Grievous returning would be too much to ignore. He is quite happy they've all come here, as today, the Jedi will finally meet their rightful end together. He ended by saying, "Long live the Empire," and then the ground trembled. Across the horizon, the entire dormant Imperial army here was activated. Dozens of AT-ATs rose, AT-STs powered on, rows of TIE bombers and fighters ignited their engines, and most surprisingly, thousands of dormant battle droids were activated, climbing into walkers, gunships, or firing lines. Tarkin and Krennic had secretly brought these droids here from a hidden reserve fleet, and with a single command, the sky turned red and green with incoming fire. Turbo lasers, missiles, and orbital bombs were shot down toward the central base, where Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Padme and the children stood. Their world should have ended in that moment. Tarkin expected this mission to end immediately in victory. He watched from a distant AT-AT, and as the first wave of fire struck the base, Tarkin smiled with victory. But as the smoke cleared, Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda were standing on the wide balcony, lifting their hands together. A bright blue shimmer formed in front of them, catching every blast. Cannon fire thudded against an invisible wall. Bombs dissolved into sparks as they could hit the shield of the Force. The 3 Jedi pushed deeper into the Force than ever before, their minds and strength sinking together. The shield rippled and thickened, and in the deepest part of that connection, they felt others here joining them. Jedi of the past, Jedi in the Force, Qui-Gon, Windu, Plo, many Jedi long gone, here to help them. Their presences wrapped around the trio, turning the shield into a dome of pure light, holding back the entire army. And inside the base, Padme was working to send out a message to Ahsoka and the clones, telling her they were in desperate need. Ahsoka heard the call, and she would help. The 3 Jedi were standing strong for as long as they could, the Imperial army firing down as Tarkin demanded more and more to break the shield. But finally, help arrived. Old Republic cruisers emerged. Clone troopers were pouring out in dropships, descending behind the Imperial formation. Tarkin didn't expect this. He expected the attack to last a minute, if not less. And yet, he was now under attack. Ahsoka led the defense charge herself, weaving through TIE fire in her starfighter, while clones landed and flew around in waves, overrunning droids, destroying walkers, pushing the Imperials into chaos as they tried to turn around and meet the onslaught. The sky erupted. Republic cannon fire smashed into the rear lines of the Imperial army, cutting through AT-ATs, shredding bomber swarms. As the enemy turned their focus, the pressure on the Jedi gave way, giving Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Yoda room to race upward into the battle. They joined Ahsoka's fleet, cutting down droids, clearing paths for clone squads that were still loyal after all these years, that had been waiting for this moment. After a long while, the last AT-AT collapsed in the distance with a heavy metal groan. Tarkin was inside of it as it exploded, and with his death, the droid army flickered offline as its command node was destroyed. When the smoke gave way, the ground was quiet. The Jedi stood together, and in this moment, where he could have turned back and taken control, Anakin stood with the Jedi and with the emerging Republic. This was the moment that Padme needed to truly rip away the strings holding the Empire together. With Tarkin gone and his hidden army destroyed, the true nature of the Empire could finally be exposed without threat of Imperial leaders rebelling. They were all arrested for treason, because of Tarkin's failure. Krennic, Amida, so many others in the conspiracy were put away into jail. Padme stepped forward, publicly addressing the Senate, exposing Tarkin's plot, the corruption, the danger that nearly destroyed her family. The Senate erupted with support as she declared the Empire dissolved. The New Republic was born in its place, choosing her as its first Chancellor, and Bail Organa as Vice-Chancellor. The galaxy shifted almost overnight towards a new vision. As the government reshaped itself, so too did the Jedi. Obi-Wan took the lead, traveling between worlds to gather young Force sensitives and teach them without the mistakes of the older order. In time, he became the Grandmaster of a new order that served the people. Yoda stepped away entirely, choosing a quiet exile in the Outer Rim, offering wisdom only when asked through Jedi temples and meditation. Anakin too left to a distant world. He would live simply, helping people around him, but staying away from public power. His exile was a quiet path to healing for himself, and in the end, Padme's New Republic and Obi-Wan's Jedi Order grew side by side as two new beginnings built from everything that they'd lost. And folks, that is our story for today. Hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. And I did this type of video a while ago. It was what if Yoda killed Palpatine, but it was off the rails. Palpatine like transferred his essence into Anakin on Mustafar. It was insane, but I had a lot of fun with it. But I just wanted to do one more, I don't know, grounded, or just, I really like the idea of what I did at the beginning, setting it all up. Yeah, Yoda overhearing that Obi-Wan won, I thought would be really fun motivation to explore, and overall, I really liked it. So, hope you did as well. Let me know down in the comments what you want to see next. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.